Hey everyone, Brandon Stieg here in the Element Artworks Design Studio, and we're getting ready to kick off a new piece. This one I'm really excited about. This is the wood ram skull, so it's round 2 with the rams. We're gonna go for a totally different look. It's a modern, contemporary, clean looking piece. Very different than the grittiness that we had in the last one. So we'll see if we can pull this off. I'm excited to get going. So this piece starts out the way that most of my pieces start out, and that's essentially creating a template, a drawing that I'll do to scale of what I want to use. That kind of gives me a 2D reference for carving the 3D piece. Some of this is going to be repetitive. If you watch the metal ram skull build, that one got really fun, so check that video out. I used this same skull that I used as the base form for that metal piece as the basis for this piece, so it actually becomes the skull that I ultimately finish out to make this ram skull, which is the second in the series. So this wood in particular is really nice to carve, and I really like this part of the process. It's one of my favorites. My background is more in wood than it is in metal, actually, and so it's kind of falling back to some things that I used to do, and I really enjoy this part of the process. So I use a variety of tools for this. Once you have that block formed up, one of my favorites is a pneumatic die grinder with tungsten carbide bits. It's just a way to take off material and get into some of the finer curves of the shape of this skull. So here I'm getting into how I'm going to attach the horns. I'm just templating those with a piece of paper, and then I'm going to cut that out in steel and drill some holes in that with dowels that I can then later attach to the skull. So once we have those plates fixed on top of the skull, the fun part begins, and that's when you get to shape the horns on these things. And I really enjoy this part of the process. It's evolved a little bit for me, and I've used these paper templates you see in the background here. Free-forming them is just as good and just as fast, and so I'm relying much less on those in this build. All right, so this part's always kind of fun, rolling out the horns, and I've done a few of these now, getting a little bit better at it. Each one, I kind of figure out those little nuances, those little shortcuts. Trick is to get them relatively symmetrical. They're never going to be perfect, no chance of that, so you can just release yourself of that responsibility right off the bat. But getting them, relatively symmetrical. So adjacent to the eyes is where I like to put them, bring them forward. I think it gives the ram a little bit more character. And the goal here is to roll these out, have a continuously tapering distance between these two bars so they eventually meet at the end, not to a point, but kind of to a rounded end. And then obviously keeping them somewhat similar. And so I have one more to do on each one of these, the lower end. And this is kind of a trick that I don't know, just happened across, I guess. I put it at the corner of my table, I clamp it down, whether it's metal or wood, and I can rotate it on either side and work the one off the edge of the table, rotate it the other way, get that one to match and kind of flip-flop back and forth. Once these are done and this is all sanded and it's all dialed in, I'll do a couple of dry fits just to make sure I can get it in there, put a little texture on the end of the round bar of the dowels, and then I'll epoxy those in place, and then they're not going anywhere, so they'll be there for good. You'd have to cut them off after that, but so that's the approach here, and the idea is to get the metal and the wood separated so those can be worked separately, and then put them together at the end and have a nice seamless look, and hopefully one complements the other. So if you remember from the metal piece that we did, it had a very different look, and this piece is going to be more refined, and so these panels, the bronze that we're going to lay over and skin these horns with, needs to be more refined as well. So I need to take a little bit more care with this piece in terms of how these are shaped, and the idea is to be able to shape these in a kind of a seamless, smooth, flowing way where these panels meet up and don't have the kind of the roughness that might have existed in the other one, because we're not going to cover it up the same way. I'm not going to put beads of silicon bronze down over top of this that kind of buries all that. So I'm really enjoying working with this bronze, and I'm getting a little bit better with each piece. I'm definitely not where I want to be yet. And doing the horns on this one, the look for this piece, as I mentioned before, is to be much cleaner and much more kind of contemporary and smooth in terms of the finish. And so I don't have the luxury of kind of rough shaping these panels when I'm cladding the horns like I did with the steel skull. So if you watch the video on the steel skull, I could be pretty loose in shaping those panels and joining them because I knew I was gonna be covering that with a layer of, silicon bronze beads, and that just kind of hid any imperfections that I might have buried underneath that, that molten bronze. In this case, we don't have that luxury, so I need to work the bronze a little bit more carefully and get these things cleaner and tighter fitting so that we get that nicer look. I am no pro when it comes to shaping or forming metal panels, and it's something that I'm striving to learn, and I'm kind of teaching myself as I go. These guys that work panels, for automotive and do this on a regular basis, there's so much talent out there. I just respect that skill so much, and it's a difficult one to learn. It takes time, and it's very kind of counterintuitive to me in terms of the way that you work this metal. To shrink it and stretch it and bend it and get these complex curves and twists in the metal, and it's quite a process, and it's a bit frustrating but very rewarding once you start to get the hang of it. And I'm just starting to do that here, and so it's an enjoyable process to learn. And again, the bronze is so forgiving. It's kind of like working with copper. I'm using mallets a lot on wood block to shape these because they're so small. I can't use some of the other tools that I would like to be able to use. This one being, the smoother, more contemporary looking, these panels need to be much cleaner in terms of their general shape as they go on if I want it to look the way I planned. The process on this guy has been really similar to the first one, aside from the wood. Right now I'm forming out this second horn. And if I can get it out, I'll show you how I'm doing that. The strategy here is just to, dowel in this piece. And once this is all done and finished well, those will be epoxied in and forming the horns out similar to the first. And this is kind of the way I tend to lean towards doing things, but it's a wireframe with flat bar, and then I'm just cladding it in the bronze, and I'm just shaping these panels and filling them in. And part of the reason I do it that way is because I'm just not good enough at forming metal yet to form these. What I'd like to be able to do is form these three-dimensionally in air without the framework and fit them together and be good enough to be able to do that. So I'm working towards that. We have the equipment, ready to go to kind of get there, but I'm just not there yet. So this is the way I'm doing it, and it works. Pretty different, right? The vibe on them, the feel, the texture, this is a lot more realistic. It's grittier, where this is going to be cleaner and a lighter color, more finished vibe. So I'm really looking forward to carving the wood and getting a nice finish on that. I'm not 100% sure if we're going to put any texture on this or not, but if I do, it's going to be much lighter than this, not as heavy. Maybe some lines, maybe not. So I'm kind of thinking just clean right now. We'll see how that goes. Now that we have the horns shaped and ready for finishing, we get to move on to the ram skull. And this ram skull has been waiting a long time to get finished. It was the base from which I formed the metal skull, so it's kind of served two purposes. So we're going to carve out the eye sockets and around the nose cavity and inside little details and just accentuate some of the curves of the bone around the eyes and jaw. I'm going with a white gel stain, and I wipe this on and wipe it off relatively quickly. If you leave it on too long, it'll set up a little bit too much. All I'm trying to do is lighten the wood here. So I'm gonna put on a thin layer and then wipe it off almost immediately and let that lighten the wood. If I need to do it again, I'll do it again, but in this case, I'm just gonna do one pass. So on to finishing the bronze horns, and this again is always a tricky part of the process for me. I've been using this Sculpt Nouveau antiquing solution. It puts a lot of color into the metal. I don't want these very dark. I want them light, but I want them to have a little bit of character to them. So what you see me doing here is using the torch to chase all the moisture out of the metal after I've patinaed it, so that I can then finish the piece however I want. In this case, it's going to be the bowling alley whack. I'll heat the metal up and it will absorb into the bronze, and it kind of keeps the patina that you want fixed in place and protects the metal at the same time. For this one, instead of burning in, my signature or putting my name in the side of it, I decided to make a little plaque, and this is a stamp that I had made with my logo, and I'll put it into a little circular plaque that will kind of be mounted on the back side of the skull. If you have a buyer or someone's holding it, they can see who made it, and most people in galleries and buyers, they want a piece signed, so it's nice to have something authentic there, and it's worth putting a little extra time into doing that well. I'm just making some little bronze nails, and I didn't have any, And so I figured I'd make some. I'm just using the propane oxygen torch to heat up the ends of brazing rod to ball that up, and then I'll hammer it flat and sharpen the tip, and you have a nail. All right, you guys, that's a wrap on the wood ram skull. I really enjoyed the process on this one. It was one of my favorite pieces. I love the way it came out. I don't usually say that about my own work. I'm usually disappointed. This one I'm happy with, so that's always a success for me. I hope you enjoyed the process. If you have any comments, any suggestions, any questions at all, really,